All right, Nuggets fans, welcome in to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn, at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am excited to talk about this upcoming week for the Nuggets, some takeaways that I have from the previous 6 games of the season, especially these last 2, which I thought were pretty enlightening for Denver and how you just got to kind of figure it out, and then how to sort of illuminate things over the course of this upcoming season. There's a lot to go over. There's some things that we're gonna have plenty of information. The Nuggets have 4 more home games this week, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. Again, I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. Really quickly, this podcast is brought to you by the good folks over at BetOnline, which is the #1 source for online betting and the world's most trusted betting platform. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds from everything football, NBA, NHL, to entertainment and political props. Head on over to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Once again, I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Let's get into this upcoming week. Denver's 3-3, and it feels like there's been a little bit of a soft reset on what has happened in the Nuggets season so far. Obviously, you've got the Murray concussion protocol. He's going to try to clear that as soon as possible to get back on the floor. But in the course of this year, Denver goes 0-2 at the beginning, really looking bad just overall. And then the switch was kind of flipped in that second game. They figured some stuff out. Then they win 2 tough road games against pretty bad teams, figuring out how to play a little bit more. And then they go to Minnesota and they struggle. But Murray goes out. Team kind of figures some stuff out. Aaron Gordon plays great. Nikola Jokic still setting the table for everybody. 16 assists in that one, 26 points. Michael Porter figures some stuff out too. And the Nuggets nearly steal that game. It wasn't a game that I expected them to win. It wasn't a game that I expected Denver to even play that well in after the way that things had gone in the previous 2, and especially against OKC. But they figured it out, and they did some good things. And then back-to-back on Saturday night, you expect them to be a little bit tired. Nope, Denver did exactly what they needed to do. Bench kind of was a little bit shaky in the first segment, of course, but in the second half especially, they turned it on and really kept things on track. Jokic and the starters were great throughout, and it just feels like the starters have figured some things out over the course of these last few days. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here. We're going to talk about that. I want to share some final thoughts on this back-to-back really quick. And then second segment, we'll do takeaways to start the season. Third segment, we're going to talk about how to have a successful homestand. What is that going to look like for Denver? How are they going to be able to do it? Okay. Right now, the 2 players that I think are the most interesting for the Nuggets are Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon, for a couple of different reasons. Michael Porter, I think, has really figured some stuff out. Believe it or not, he's now shooting 37.5% from 3. The way that he started the year, 3 of 16 from the 3, didn't really look comfortable. It was interesting to see that. But then over the course of these last couple of games especially, he has gotten right back on track. There are no questions about Porter and his ability to shoot like that. I remember it was funny when he started off the year a little bit slowly after our last year. It was fascinating to track that because in the finals the year before, he had slowed down, kind of like this year he had slowed down in the Minnesota playoff series. So there were questions that were coming to him like, hey, do you still see yourself as a good shooter? Or do you want to try to impact the game in other ways? And it's funny, like Michael Porter being asked, are you a good shooter, is hilarious. And Mike kind of gave an ode to that a little bit over the course of this year when we talked to him on Saturday, basically saying if that stretch at the beginning had happened in January, it would not have been a story. And he's right. The only reason is because it's the first thing that we saw. So it is fascinating to see how this kind of breaks down. But I do think that he's playing better. Defensively, there's still some questions that I have, but against a team like Utah without Lauri Markkanen and some of their guys, there weren't a lot of threats to be had. And then Christian Braun, or no, not Christian Braun, excuse me. That's next. Aaron Gordon, especially, is just playing tremendous basketball right now. I actually want to pull his numbers up so that people can really appreciate it, because it is something where you don't really fully understand until you actually see it. He's averaging 17 and a half points per game, which is, it would be tied for a career high effectively. He's not going to stay at 17 and a half, but it's been really cool to start. 7.8 rebounds per game, which is tied for a career high. 3.5 assists per game, which is close to a career high. It's not quite there. Only 0.8 steals and 0.3 blocks, so nothing crazy there, but he's shooting 55% from three to start the season and 84.6% from the free throw line. I don't expect those to continue, because why would I? Like, Aaron Gordon has been a subpar shooter for much of his career. But I do think, and one of the things that I heard from some folks in the organization is that he is really starting, like he spent a lot of the time this offseason just shooting. And I love to hear that, because, as you know, if you've listened to my show before, that's the one concern that I have going forward for him, is how does he continue to fit into Denver's ethos as the NBA continues to become more shooting centric. And Jokic is like he's shooting great, obviously, this year, but he's also not a super high volume shooter. Brown's not a high volume shooter. Gordon's not a high volume shooter. Murray can be, but there's a lot of times where he just likes to kind of navigate the mid-range. So I can see Denver really falling behind if nobody's willing to shoot. Aaron Gordon has been willing to shoot, and it's been great to see. That is something where I think he can extend his prime years because of that. I really do. Now, it'll be a different version of Aaron Gordon, but that's the version that the Nuggets need. And they need somebody who's going to be capable of staying on the floor, doing the things that he could do. And so if he could shoot, more power to him. That would be great. Nikola Jokic and Christian Braun are also playing great. It's undoubtedly. We'll talk about them a little bit more in the second segment, but I just wanted to let it, like, that's something that I really want to go over in the second segment for sure. Those four, Jokic, Braun, Porter, Gordon, that's been the rock of Denver's foundation to start the season. Murray obviously was kind of bad before getting hurt, and that's part of the absence is also part of the problem too. Not his fault. He got drilled by Julius Randle trying to set a screen for somebody. And then the bench has just been extremely unreliable. So having those four guys as the main bread and butter for what the Nuggets do sounds kind of like last year, right? Where KCP, Porter, Gordon, Jokic were the consistent ones throughout the season. So I'm not surprised that it's happening this way. And I'm curious to see how it goes for Denver throughout the season, and if those guys can actually keep it up, because everybody on that roster is playing like 34 to 37 minutes per game among those four starters. So that's going to be something that I'm watching for sure. Russ in these final two games was at his best on the defensive end and not the offensive end. We will get into that in just a little bit here, but Josie says it here. Westbrook is shooting this season 2 of 11, 1 of 8, 5 of 12, 3 of 7, 0 of 8, 2 of 10. It's the lowest field goal percentage in the NBA, minimum 50 attempts. And I pulled up a similar number. He has the lowest true shooting percentage in the NBA, minimum 50 attempts. So it's not just the fact that the field goals aren't going in, because the free throws, for some folks like a Joel Embiid, for example, that helps gets the true shooting percentage up, gets the overall efficiency up. With Russ, he's actually been like 80% from the free throw line, so you'd think it would be the same there. No, he's been that bad from a field goal percentage standpoint. But I do think that the defense does matter on this front. And I also looked up a list of the players with the lowest field goal percentage in the NBA so far, or lowest true shooting percentage in the NBA. Here's the next guys on that list. So it's Russ at the bottom, Kevin Porter Jr., Patrick Williams, Zachary Risachet, Keontae George. Ayo Dosunmu's on there. So, like you got guys like Fred VanVleet, Kyle Kuzma, Tyrese Halliburton has been washed through the beginning of the season. Alperen Şengün, who you would think a big shooting 46% true shooting, that's pretty bad. It is still early on that front. I would expect Russ to get better as the year goes along from an efficiency standpoint, but that is still really bad. So if it doesn't get better, then we've got some things to monitor. But do want to mention defense has been good. It has been really valuable, and obviously had 5 steals last game. So hopefully this isn't the Facu Campazzo situation. That is the last thing I want, as you guys know. But that's kind of insulting to Russ, who has accomplished a lot in the NBA. So we'll see. I think that Julian Strawther, especially just looking at the Wolves and Jazz games, Julian Strawther needs more shots and more playing time. When he can get the shots up, the team is going to be better. Among like the bench guys, he's by far the best shooter, 8 of 17 from 3. But the fact that he's only attempted 17 threes in 6 games, I think says a lot about like just sometimes he'll be able to get some extended run and some extended opportunities like he did against the Jazz. But more often than not, he's been around 2 to 3 threes per game. And that's just not enough for the only shooter on Denver's bench unit. So Denver's got to continue to look for him. They've got to continue to find him. And if Julian can continue to free himself up, there was a play early on where Hunter Tyson had the ball in the post, and like it wasn't a real post up. He was just looking to pass, but Julian used a great screen off ball from DeAndre Jordan to come free, and then Hunter looked for him. That's a play, by the way, that Dario Saric can make. And if the Nuggets are going to look for ways to get Dario Saric back into the game, it will be facilitating for off-ball actions as opposed to trying to keep up with Russell Westbrook. So that's one of the dynamics here that Denver's got to kind of figure out. But I do think that Julian can continue to get threes. They've got to keep looking for him. A lot of the threes have found Peyton Watson for some reason, and as opposed to Julian Strawther. Watson, he found some more energy and impact on the defensive end versus Utah, but the offense has just been brutal. He's 1 of 10 from 3 to start the year. He's got to figure some stuff out. And more than just the threes, when he's driving, he has to figure out how to drive and how to both draw contact and finish over guys. So going to be fascinating to see. And finally, the Saric versus DeAndre Jordan versus Zeke Nnaji conversation. If you want somebody that's going to keep up with Russell Westbrook, it's going to be Zeke Nnaji. He's the one that can do it. If you want a rim roller that can just grab rebounds and roll to the rim and provide something traditional, it's going to be DJ. If you want to create some better offense, it's going to be Dario. Like, that's going to be the thing. And Dario's got to be functional in order to figure out how to do that. But hopefully he can turn things around, because this start to the season for him has been insanely bad. I don't think I've ever seen a center for Denver be this bad at this stage. Now, it doesn't mean that he can't turn it around, but just calling a spade, this has been pretty stressful for Denver. So they got to figure it out. Michael Malone's got to figure out how to get him back into rhythm here. I don't expect him to play tonight, but who knows? Let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to chat about some other general takeaways, including Nikola Jokic might be the MVP again. I know Nuggets fans don't need to hear about it, but folks in the national media have probably got to get themselves accustomed to putting Jokic at the top of their ballot. We'll be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on the audio side, 5-star reviews go a long way for this particular podcast, for all particular podcasts. But if you're interested, would love to hear a 5-star review. Or if it's not a 5-star review, just any review, just tell me what you want better, and I'll try to deliver. That's how we roll here. All right, takeaways. Let's start with Jokic's MVP case. I wrote an article today about the 3 general takeaways that I have from the start of Denver's season through 6 games. I think it's enough time to start making the initial reads on what's going to happen for the Nuggets this year. And I have 3 of them. It's hard to have an initial read on Murray other than he's been pretty bad. Porter started off the year pretty poorly, but then has figured some stuff out. Aaron Gordon obviously has been pretty great throughout. Christian Braun, we'll talk about him in just a second, but the real one that everybody wants to know about is Nikola Jokic. His MVP case is going to be real again if the Nuggets can win 50-plus games. That is my initial takeaway here, and not a surprising one to anybody that has paid attention to the league at all. At all. Here's the thing. Jokic's numbers are insane. Right now, he's in the top 10 in points per game, which is something he never usually does. I don't think that he's going to finish in the top 10 in points per game, but just looking at it from a visual standpoint, you can see why folks are like, oh, holy cow, what is this guy on? What is this guy doing? He has been incredible. 29.8 points per game, 12.3 rebounds per game, and 9.8 assists per game. Those are tremendous numbers, and they're also kind of adding in 1.5 steals and 1 block. Again, I think that those numbers are probably going to go down throughout the year, but him averaging close to 30 a game is not surprising to me. It's just not. The way that things have gone for Denver, he's had to be more of a scorer. What has been surprising is the fact that he's shooting 59% from three-point range. He has been great. And the added aggressiveness from the outside, it makes him even more valuable as an offensive player because opposing teams have to bring their rim protector, their main guy to guard Jokic, out to the perimeter in order to slow him down. And it opens up things underneath for when Aaron Gordon wants to cut, Aaron Gordon. When Michael Porter wants to cut, Michael Porter. Christian Braun's been cutting a whole bunch. Russell Westbrook, if he's going to be a part of this, he's going to have some open lanes to the rim because Jokic is at the top. And 59% is insane. Now, again, small sample size. This will normalize. It will. It has to, right? There's no, let me do my thing. There's absolutely no way that Nikola Jokic can keep shooting above 50% from 3 on the season. I don't see it. There's no way. But if he did, that would be sick. Anthony Davis is at 31.8 points per game. He's been very good, although he's just not really much of a floor spacer. Giannis, 31 points per game, 1-5 record for the Bucks. Jason Tatum, 30.3 points per game. He's been okay. He's taken 11 threes per game, 34% from 3. So the spacing isn't fully there. And he also just averages 4.6 assists because it's not really their creator. He just kind of fires up shots. And then LaMelo Ball, surprisingly, Charlotte's 2-4, but LaMelo's averaging 30 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, 5.5 turnovers per game, which is hilarious. That's pretty good. That is classic LaMelo right there. But you just look at some of these other lines as well. Luka Doncic even had a really good game against Orlando, I believe, last night. he's only averaging 28 and then 8.5 rebounds, 6.2 assists, and he's shooting 31% from three. Shea, 26.5 points, 28% from three, 6.7 rebounds, 6.5 assists. Shea is clearly the best player on the best team right now. I think OKC is clearly the best team right now. Boston is like, they have an argument, of course, but I do think that OKC is the best team. And so we're going to get down to it in March and April, and people are going to have to make a choice because I don't think that Denver's going to be able to keep pace with teams like OKC. I think that OKC is going to be like 62 wins, 64 wins, somewhere in that range. And Denver's probably going to win about 52. And so that gap there, is that personified between SGA's impact or the rest of the roster? And I think anybody that's sane looks at the way that OKC has built their roster from top to bottom and understands that like that is the strength of their team, is the fact that every position is a position of strength for them. But there will be people that probably just vote Shea because of how good the Thunder are going to be. But there are also going to be people that look at the numbers and be like, holy crap, Jokic is still so good. And people are going to have to parse that. So I'm very curious to see how this voting process goes this year. If Denver is at the end of their rope and saying, hey, 50, 51, 52 wins, is that enough for Jokic to really justify an MVP run again? It might not be. And I'm curious to see who's on what side, because I think I have an idea of who will be on what side. Second major takeaway for the season. Christian Braun is different, but not worse than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Every Nuggets fan right now is posting KCP numbers every game where he's got like 5 points, 1 assist, 1 rebound, shooting 20% from three, whatever it is. I don't really care about that because if he was in Denver with a better offensive creator, then he would be shooting better. That's just how it works. But what Christian Braun has done to step in for KCP has been really, really impressive. And that is what should be the story. Not what KCP is doing somewhere else, but what Christian Braun is doing this year. 63.5% true shooting for Christian Braun. His splits are crazy. It's like 52.5, 42.1, 88.2. I believe that those are the shooting splits: field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, free throw percentage. That's insane. That's insane for somebody who the previous year was really struggling. And it's funny how playing with Jokic can really help things like that. But there is a certain skill set that Christian Braun had to bring in order to be successful. And he's been aggressive. He's been willing. He's been cutting. He's been running. He's been doing what he needs to do in order to fit in well. And as a result, the offensive rating for the Nuggets when Christian Braun is out there with Jokic is 127.7. That is very good. It won't stay that good because Denver's not going to be able to play Brooklyn, Toronto, and Utah all the time. But they are a good offense. They're a great offense when Jokic is out there. And the limitations of Christian Braun have clearly not been so limiting for the Nuggets at this point. Jokic, he'll work with what he has. And Christian Braun, I think he has been very willing to kind of get going. If you guys remember from the offseason, one of my big takeaways for what Jokic should be working on, it's not necessarily trying to win an MVP, trying to do anything specific. My only thing with him was he should try to get Christian Braun up to speed as soon as possible. That should be his sole focus at the beginning of the season. And it hasn't been his sole focus because it can't be. But it's been one of the things that he's really tried to do. He's running a lot of DHOs with Christian Braun. Christian Braun is shooting a lot of threes because Jokic is wanting him to, asking him to. And that's a big deal. Having the confidence of your best player, the best player in the world, is a really big deal that the Nuggets are trying to work through with him. So Christian Braun has always been a confident player. The dunk that he had on Rudy Gobert was the best moment of the weekend. And like that is going to live on top 10 dunk lists for this season for a long time. Obviously, Christian has some things to work on. The drive that he had after that, which, by the way, the last 2 minute report called no foul on Rudy Gobert's contest there. Okay. Um, I think that what Christian Braun has done to start this year has been really impressive. He still needs to get better from the corner because that's just something he has to do while Jokic and Murray are operating from the top of the key. But it's not the worst thing in the world that if like just a few spots over, you're shooting like 50% from three versus 20% from three in the corners. So we'll see what happens, but I've been pretty high on what we've seen from Christian Braun. And final primary takeaway. The Nuggets bench shooting sucks. It is so bad. It has been really, really bad to start this year. And it's too bad because I honestly thought that it would be pretty solid. I thought that things would be fine. I wasn't expecting Russell Westbrook and Peyton Watson to be amazing shooters or anything like that, but I expect them to be better than where they are. And of course, I expected Dario Saric to be a better version of himself than what the Nuggets have seen so far. Here are the numbers. 5 of 35 from three-point range for the bench guys not named Julian Strawther. This is combining Westbrook, Peyton Watson, Hunter Tyson, Dario Saric, and DeAndre Jordan, who doesn't shoot threes. But like that's part of the problem is like Denver doesn't have a lot of three-point spacing with their second unit. So we've seen a lot of good shots or good like quality looks from the bench, particularly because like Russell Westbrook's getting the kick out or Peyton Watson's getting the kick out. Saric is 0 for 3. He hasn't had a lot of three-point opportunities. He honestly hasn't caught the ball in a position to shoot the three that often. And so I hope that they can figure it out eventually. But part of the way that Denver has survived this is let's play Strawther, let's play Michael Porter at the same time, trying to keep those guys on the floor as often as possible. And I think that Strawther, he's just got to play. He's just got to play so much. And 8 of 17 from three for him, 5 of 35 from three for the rest of the guys. I think that the Nuggets have to add a shooter. Like that's just straight up, you need a bench shooter. What kind of bench shooter, the position that they play, who they replace, I think is all up for debate over the course of these next few months. But the Nuggets are going to have to figure it out, and they might have to act a little sooner than later on something like this because the bench offense has been so bad. 81 offensive rating without Jokic on the floor is insane. Like part of that is just circumstance and what's happened and the teams that they've played and the way that things have gone. But that includes games against Utah, Toronto, and Brooklyn. So being that bad on the offensive end is pretty scary. And I think that Denver, over the course of these next 4 games, they're going to have to figure out how to bounce back from that because if they don't, like they're going to lose games because the bench is just giving away leads that the Nuggets starters build up. And that is, I'm not going to lie, I think Jokic is getting very frustrated with that. He's getting bothered by it. It's for 10 years, he has been a good soldier on that front. This is his 10th year. And I think that the Nuggets are understanding of that. They are wary. They thought that Dario Saric would be a good option, and so did I. I honestly thought that he would really help Denver's bench. Hasn't come to pass. We'll see if that changes over the course of these next couple months. I still am open to the possibility that Dario kind of bounces back here. But I also know that sometimes it doesn't work out. And Denver has to be understanding of that. So we will see. We'll see what it looks like. But tell you what, let's take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how to have a successful homestand for this Nuggets team. Denver plays 4 home games Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. We'll talk about them all on Pickaxe and Roll. All right. Final segment, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would appreciate it. I do think that Denver's made positive progression on the offensive end. I know I have that in my topic list. That was more with the starters. Starters just look good offensively. Michael Porter has looked good offensively. Aaron Gordon being aggressive offensively is very important. Jokic is Jokic. And that's where the positive progression really ends. I do think that Strother, he's figuring some stuff out and he mixes up a lot of his minutes with Jokic and with the starters because of the way the Nuggets run their rotation right now, where Strother comes in for Michael Porter and then Porter comes back in to play with the second unit. That's a big deal. And I think that if Strother can continue to get some opportunities with that starting unit, there will be some good progression that happens. Now it's up to Peyton Watson to join him. It's up to Russell Westbrook to get that field goal percentage up. And it's up to Darius Arch to sort of get back on track here. And we'll see if they can do it. All right. Final segment. How to have a successful homestand. Denver's got Toronto tonight. They've got OKC on Wednesday. They've got Miami on Friday. And they've got Dallas on Sunday. It's funny. After that, Denver's got 4 days off. They've got a lot of off time at that point. And then the in-season tournament starts immediately after that, I believe. Let me just check to confirm that. But I believe that the Nuggets get a whole bunch of off time to prepare for the in-season tournament. Yes. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to get these 4 home games. Then Denver goes on the road for 3 road games. New Orleans, Memphis, and Memphis. They're playing Memphis back-to-back on November 17th and November 19th. Those are going to be in-season tournament games. And then Denver comes home and they play Dallas in another in-season tournament game. So if you're somebody that cares about the in-season tournament, then this is going to be an interesting stretch because Denver right here in these 4 home games, these should be used as preparation for that. And I think that they will. I think the Nuggets are sort of figuring some stuff out. Now, the preparation is going to be, hey, Jokic, you got to play a lot of minutes. hey, Mike, you got to shoot a lot. Hey, Julian, you got to get back on track and stop taking fouls. Stop doing all that stuff. Is there actually going to be a lot of growth there? I don't know. We'll see. The question right now that should lead off on everybody's heads, when will Jamal Murray be back? Is he going to be back? Like he's already out for this Toronto game tonight. Will he be back on Wednesday against OKC? Will he be back on Friday against Miami? Denver has to get back to integrating him and figuring out how to bring him up to speed. That's the next step, I think, for the Nuggets. Because it feels like the other 4 starters, Jokic, Porter, Gordon, Christian Braun, to varying degrees, they figured out what the heck they need to do. Now it's on Murray. Now when Murray comes back, it's on him to try to figure out how he can fit into what is going on and really excel in certain circumstances. He could also be one of the guys that helps the bench, at least a little bit. Maybe there's times where Russell Westbrook doesn't play with the second unit and more just staggers with the starters to try to keep them faster. I don't know. I don't know what it's ultimately going to be, but Murray's got to figure out how to fit into that. And I think if he can get back during this homestand, that's what the Nuggets need at this point. They need Murray to get back on track. Can Denver survive without him against the good teams that they play? I think sure. Toronto's not a good team. They're without Scotty Barnes, courtesy of Jokic's elbows, unfortunately. And they are going to be, I'm pretty sure, without Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk as well, although I didn't check the injury report of late. So Toronto, not a good team. Denver should be able to win against them. The next one, though, against OKC, I just have no idea what Denver does against them. And that might sound a little bit defeatist, but the way that OKC has played, the machine that they are, the defense that they are, they have figured out how to guard Denver and how to attack Denver. And I'm just not really sure what Denver can do. Now, The good thing about playing at home is that it's easier to make some of those high energy, high effort plays, getting the momentum, getting on these runs. But OKC does a really good job, even in the midst of those runs, of getting a point here, getting a three there, making sure to capitalize on your mistakes. And they're just a metronome, man. That's the great thing about great defensive teams is they can always fall back on their defense, turn it into offense, get out and run, do the things that they need to do. And so I'm not sure what to tell people about the OKC matchup. That one to me, I'm just penciling in as a loss right now because OKC is a machine. And if I'm wrong, then great. I would love to be wrong. That would be awesome. I want Denver to show something against this OKC team. Maybe Russell Westbrook guarding Shea a little bit. Maybe Russell Westbrook kind of getting out in transition and outrunning the defense would be good. We'll see. But I do think that the high energy and effort plays can really help against teams like Toronto, against teams like Miami, and against teams like Dallas. Dallas is one where, especially if you make a great defensive play against Luka Doncic, he's going to do the Jokic thing and turn and look at the ref and be like, hey, what the hell was that? And he'll do it way more than Jokic does. So anytime you get a defensive stop against Luka, got to get out and run, do the things you need to do to get easy baskets. And maybe Denver can get into a nice little rhythm off of that. That would be great. The Toronto game should be easy if the process is good. The Miami game should be a win too if the Nuggets are doing what they need to do, if they're setting the table, if Jokic is doing what he needs to do. I think that Porter, also a really good option against Miami specifically. Porter and Julian Strawther, guys that can shoot over a 2-3 zone. Miami has to junk things up, and they never are really successful against Denver. Dallas is the big swing game because I don't think that OKC is going to be a win for Denver. So can Denver go 3-1 on the rest of this homestand if they win against Dallas? That's the big swing game. That's a great team, I think. And the question is whether Denver can keep up with what their offense is going to be while Denver's bench is the way that it is. I don't know. Peyton Watson's got to show up in that one. He's got to be a good defensive player for Denver against Luka. But I am like Peyton's defense overall has been pretty mixed. Not as good as you would hope. Hopefully by that point he is tip-top shape defensively. And hopefully by that point the Nuggets can figure out how to get Julian Strawther some more shots because that will be what helps prop them up over some of these teams. Murray almost definitely back by that Dallas game as well. So he should be able to help with some of the scoring, but it's one of those matchups that I know how Denver looks against OKC. Now we've seen what they do against Minnesota. Now I want to see what they look like against Dallas. If Denver goes 0 for 3 in all those matchups, then that's not a great sign because they had an opportunity to win against Minnesota, never really gave themselves a chance against OKC. If it's against Dallas and Denver also looks pretty bad, that should be kind of a sign of that Denver may just not be at the level of these top teams yet. I think they've got 4 guys right now that are playing pretty well. Jokic, Porter, Gordon, Christian Braun. If Murray gets back and he starts playing great, that would be really helpful for Denver too. But you need more than 5 guys. You need probably 7, maybe 8. In a regular season, it would be great if you had more. But that's where I'm a little concerned. So, look, we'll see what happens. I'm excited to check in on it. Josie asks, what team in the next 4 games would Holmes shine the most stylistically? This is an interesting question. Just thinking about it, OKC would be the one where you would think, okay, he can switch out a little bit, he can run, he can keep up. That would be one where if he was at his peak, he would be really good. But asking him to play against OKC and what they do, that's a really tough ask. Toronto, they build their rotation around guys that look and play like DaRon Holmes. So that would be a good matchup for him, just in terms of understanding what he has to do and then figuring out how to flourish. Dallas, I think, actually, I mean, honestly, all of them, man, all of them make a lot of sense. Dallas and Miami, like, it's funny. All of those games would be great for DaRon Holmes. That's my takeaway. Miami is one where you need to be able to switch and keep up and move your feet. Doesn't necessarily need to play like Jokic in order to be good as a backup center for Denver. But I think that Holmes would be doing a really good job of keeping up with Russell Westbrook, honestly. And if he could shoot the pick and pop three, it's icing on the cake. So I don't know. It's tough. We'll say, Zeke as well. Zeke could definitely do that. Reggie did feed Zeke good looks. He just didn't really hit them that much last year. I could see Zeke being good in this particular setting where you need Russ. Russ is going to run the floor. He needs somebody that's going to run with him. I don't know what's ultimately going to happen with Zeke because the fact that they've gone from 5 games of Dario to now going to DeAndre Jordan and passed right by Zeke Naji, I think that should tell people all they really need to know about that situation. But the theory of Zeke is nice. So if he's capable of doing it, maybe they give him an opportunity and we see. But we're just going to have to find out together. All right. Everybody, that is going to do it, I think, for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by the good friends over at BetOnline. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate the love and support on the podcast as always. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. Let me know what you think. Does Denver get it done against Toronto tonight? And what is their record on the rest of this homestand? Do they go 2-2? Do they go 3-1? Do they surprise people and go either 4-0 or 1-4? That would be interesting. Thank you so much, everybody. We will talk to you guys very soon.